You guys know what else is funny?
Tell us, Matthew.
Yes, and this is something that goes back, kind of works in with X, is that HBO is deciding to stand with JK Rowling with her anti-trans stance, I guess you'd say.
Pro-women stance.
Pro-women stance. Right. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for correcting me. So Variety has this article that basically kind of breaks down. Now, we all know Variety is a leftist rag, right? By the way, guys, all links to these articles that we cover in the show are in the description if you guys want to do your own research. But whenever I read a Variety or Hollywood Reporter article, it's always really interesting to kind of see like the snide propaganda, opinionated stuff that they kind of throw in there, because it is very left leaning. And according to Variety, like the majority of
both owned by the same company, by the way.
Yes, both owned by the same and written by the same people, probably.
Yeah.
But what was interesting about this to me is that according to this article, like every Harry Potter fan is a liberal-leaning woman who supports transgenders, flat out, right? And they talked about how like JK Rowling's public stance for being pro-woman has negatively affected the brand. It's actually hurt the brand of Harry Potter. And when it comes down to this, it's kind of interesting simply because, so we talked about earlier how a lot of left-leaning celebrities have left X to go to Blue Sky, or as I like to call it, BS. And they basically talk about in here that, her advocating for women on the free speech platform X hurts her brand and alienates fans and stuff like that. However, the interesting thing is like, if you look at her stuff on X where people are allowed to speak freely as opposed to getting banned or thought policed or whatever, she gets a lot of support for her stances. And this is before, because like, if you guys remember old Twitter, she came out, she was like, Dumbledore's gay. Like she got a lot of like left-leaning support for that. She came out, she called PewDiePie a Nazi, because like he made a joke in poor taste and all this other stuff. And that was around the time where the adpocalypse hit. So like she was kind of contributing to that. And it wasn't until she started taking this very common sense approach, it's like, hey, we need to protect women. We need to protect women's spaces, all this other stuff, where the hand that, was feeding her essentially, like, same thing happened to Elon when he crossed over. But they basically started railing against her. They called her a transphobe. They tried to boycott Harry Potter. But because of X, we can see that her stance is actually very mainstream and she has a lot of support. And to read this article, it frames it in such a way where you would think that support doesn't actually exist, that it's all on the opposite side of things and that she's still in the wrong, but HBO is making a business decision to support her as opposed to seeing the way that the winds of change are turning and people are actually rejecting a lot of this like nonsense. So I want to get Gary's take on this. Gary, I know that you're making a video on this topic and I would love to hear your take on it.
Yes, so they definitely framed it like that, like, somehow her sales are gone, but there's no receipts for that. And in fact, sales have gone up. They haven't been affected in the least bit. I do believe there was a video game that was the best-selling video game of the year that was based on Hogwarts Legacy, which actually had transmission representation in it. And there's also a park in Florida that people go, like the Harry Potter, like Diagon Alley, it's packed. Every time I go there, it's packed and it's beautiful. It's everything Star Wars land should have been. It's they're going to do a major expansion. They're bringing out this, which I'm a Harry Potter fan, unabashedly a Harry Potter fan. I've been one for over 20 years. I read the books to my kids and became a fan. And I like most of the movies, and I can't wait to tear this apart because, again, this is one person going off the progressive reservation on one single topic that's a loser, that will continue to be a loser, will always be a loser. It's a really simple thing. I get a lot, I say MSHU and stuff, but I am pro-woman. I am pro-woman. I think they should be able to go into their bathrooms by themselves and powder their noses and talk shit about men. If they want to do that, they should be able to play their sports without men invading that. It's a very common sense thing. And yes, they're finding that
controversial.
It's not even in the least bit controversial, like at all. And that's what HBO and Warner Brothers, rightly so, recognize. Now, it's easy for them to do that because she makes so much money. If this was affecting the Harry Potter brand, they wouldn't be making this show. They'd be canceling her from the park. Why is all of a sudden all these corporations taking a stand with this? Because she makes them lots of money, and they realize behind closed doors that this isn't controversial. Most people believe this way, and it will. That is one thing that will never change. Men are men, women are women. You could try to sell. All this was a marketing campaign. We talked about it last night on FNT, Odin. This was a major marketing campaign, and a lot of people, especially Hollywood celebrities, fell prey to it because they wanted to believe it. They want to follow trends. And in this case, it's dangerous because you are harming children. And that's what she's trying to protect, children and women. And like, what are we if we don't protect our children and we have a government coming after them? I talked to, I'm blanking on his name now, an actor at the San Antonio Film Festival. And he told me, he's Cuban, and he said, my family left Cuba because they were going to take us away. The government was going to take the children away and put them in a school. That's what happened in Cuba. Like that, they want to do that here. So something that simple, to get back to JK Rowling, something this simple, we're praising it as a victory, and it is. But honestly, this should never have happened. This should have never happened. And now that we're going to get Harry Potter, if they do this show right, will be the biggest show. If they cast right and they make Harry Potter fans happy, they're going to have a whole new generation of Harry Potter fans. Harry Potter is the millennial Star Wars. It will be the biggest show in the world. It will be released weekly. They will be able to cover the books properly. And I'm cautiously optimistic about this. I want it to be good. I think this thing will be huge when it comes out. Warner Brothers standing up in this case is good. Would Disney do this? That's the question. Probably not. And that's why they're going to die as a company, because they're so wrapped up in their own ideology. But in this one instance, because JK Rowling, let's not forget, is a massive progressive, as Matt pointed out, and that's not changed. But in this issue, maybe she's going to start to see the light. Maybe she's going to start to see who's supporting her on this issue, which is both sides. Both sides is supporting her in this issue. That's exactly what Elon started to see when he started seeing the light, which is common sense. Common sense. That's what we need to return to. We need to return to this era. And I think this is a great sign for it. This is exactly why we are winning, because the modern audience is a myth. Always has been, always will be. There's only the audience. And this modern audience that they've been chasing has cost them billions of dollars. And good. Sorry, I went on a little too long.
Nope,
it's okay.
You're 100% though.
Dutch Butters, my wife, who is your work wife, ironically enough, she is one of the biggest Harry Potter fans in the world. Our wedding was Harry Potter themed. And your wife and your daughters were big Harry Potter heads.
Well, my daughter, my youngest daughter.
So. And reading this article, they talk about how, women and children who love Harry Potter, they have to separate the art from the artist because they can't stand the fact that they're supporting a franchise that, is anti-LGBTQIA+. So,
and these are the same people trying to get Polanski back in the country too, mind you. But anyway.
But do you think that the average Harry Potter fan really cares what JK Rowling has to say politically?
No, not at all. I mean, in my daughter's case, she's very much like your wife in the fact that she just breathes this stuff sometimes, depending on the day of the week. She doesn't.
She Hufflepuffs it.
Yes, she Hufflepuffs it. She's my daughter's like along the lines of us. She doesn't care about this JK Rowling's opinion on. She cares and she agrees with JK Rowling. I'll put it that way, but she doesn't let it dictate whether she's going to be a fan of Harry Potter or not. I think what I'm saying is making sense. So these people are all the ones that are out there. There's just not enough of them to make a dent in this thing, right? I mean, these people on the left, they don't understand how many people are out there that are just quiet. And, you know, it's like the Trump thing. We're going to go vote when we need to make our voices heard. And it's when it's time to make a difference. And when it comes time for this show to come out, I think their ratings will reflect that, how many people out there actually support JK Rowling's take on this trans nonsense, you know, so.
And Odin, that brings me to this idea that the winds of change are happening. Like, I doubt that Warner Brothers would have publicly come out and said J.K. Rowling can believe what she wants if this was still a, you know, Biden administration or a Harris administration or something like that. But I think that this last election, it was so overwhelmingly in favor of, you know, middle to the right, you know, of the political spectrum, that studios are starting to wake up to the fact that, like, oh, you know, maybe this DEI stuff, maybe, like, you know, these minority issues that only like a fraction of a percentage of people care about, isn't the thing to be staking our reputations on, especially when you have a great example with Jaguar that just came out with their weird rebrand where it's like all trans all the time, and didn't even show a car in their new commercial.
Yeah.
So like, what's your take on this? Do you think that HBO doing this, obviously it's a business decision, but do you think that the fact that they're willing to publicly do it is proof that we're starting to see a shift in Hollywood, albeit a slow one?
I do, because it shows us, at the very least, when it comes to HBO or the parties that are involved in the creation of this series, that there are not at least any real, you know, huge activists in this specific space. Because we all know, right? We've seen this in so many other franchises, and so many other, you know, actors especially, where when you have a clear activist who is on board with certain things, especially within the alphabet community, that they are very clear about pushing that messaging, about not being apologetic for it, and for seeing their revenues therefore completely, fall out. And what was interesting here is because I actually was trying to find some numbers, because it is, you know, sometimes harder to track movies and books and other things like down the line after initial releases, because people don't care about as much knowing those numbers up front. But the publisher, Bloomsbury Publishing, saw a big increase in their sales, 32% for the first half of this year, 2024. They've already seen a 32% increase in their sales, and pre-tax 50% increase. And they credit that to not only the J.K. Rowling novels, right, the Harry Potter novels, but also to another one of their authors that they have on staff. And so clearly they are still, you know, giving a lot of support to say, hey, these films and these books are still selling very well. And then also I saw another metric saying that the books alone back in 2023, last year, saw a 15% increase, a lot of it because of TikTok trends and because of digital marketing as well becoming a lot more prominent, and digital sales also improving too. So yeah, as we get closer to this series, those sales are going to, just like with most series, continue to go up, and gonna, as they've been trying to do, introduce this to a brand new generation of fans. And you're gonna have the old fans coming in because they want to see what kind of adaptation it's going to be like. They're going to be able to hopefully, you know, bring their kids to watch it as well. And if you can have the show be something that, at least for the first few, right, where it start off a little bit more on the family friendly side and then they get a little bit more serious as it goes on, kind of saw the movies do something similar to that, then you could potentially see this be a massive property, even bigger than what it already is. And yeah, it absolutely shows us that they obviously care about the money side of this, but if they were true activists, not even money would be enough for them, because we've seen too many companies, too many showrunners just throw their IPs into the ground, into the gutter, out of pure activism and not caring about the results. Clearly that's not the case here. So yeah, absolutely, they've got the right people, it seems, on board for this project.
And why wouldn't she be heavily involved in her own project when she's here? She wouldn't sign off on it. She doesn't need the money. Mm-hmm. She doesn't need to do anything.
And what's interesting is HBO actually has kind of a track record where they're like, story first. Like, we don't care about your politics. We just want like a good show. And they're kind of rare in Hollywood in that respect. But Tom, what's interesting about this is that, you know, you do have this situation where J.K. Rowling, you know, I mean, she famously told Spielberg to fuck off because he wanted to change, his adaptation of the book when she was first shopping around the movie rights and stuff like that. So like, she turned down like the biggest director on the planet because he wanted to take her books in a different direction. He's like, no, you're going to adapt these things exactly how I wrote them. And she's had that kind of control over the Harry Potter franchise ever since then. And you see examples of, like, you know, Lucas giving up control of Star Wars to Kennedy, and then Kennedy just going crazy with like the propaganda. You see this time and time again with like franchises where basically the original creator steps back, like Lord of the Rings, right? It was like let's put in as much, orcs having families and orcs being allegories for black people and like all this other stuff in Tolkien's work. And it's just one of those things where it's like if JK Rowling wasn't still around and still kind of controlling her creation, you very easily see this thing go off in a completely different direction, because you have the main actors of the movies coming out against her for her stance on women's issues and stuff like that. And it's kind of funny because in the article they also talk about how like the older actors who were involved in the movies, like Helena Bonham Carter and the guy who played Voldemort, I'm blanking on his name.
Ralph Fiennes.
Yes, thank you. They're all like, no, she's right. Like, let her speak her mind, even if you disagree with her. And like the young kids are like, oh, whatever. And famously, there was that actress who was involved in the Fantastic Beasts things that just came out and bit the hand that fed her. And J.K. Rowling's like, I'm going to write her out of the movies. Like, she's no longer going to be involved. So what do you think are the implications here of like the fact that J.K. Rowling is still so involved? If she wasn't, do you think that the Harry Potter franchise would be ruined?
The Harry Potter I don't think it could be ruined. Like, it is so monstrously big at this point. But yeah, biting the hand that feeds you is stupid. I've told you about this before. My headcanon for the show is to erase Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson from existence, who've gotten some roles, but really, and they said Rupert Grint came out against it. I always mispronounce his last name. I don't recall ever hearing that.
I don't either.
From Rupert. I don't recall that at all. But Emma Watson.
I think I read the quote, but I never actually heard him say it.
Yeah, I think it was really mild. I don't think he's really, but none of them have had big, huge careers afterwards, because Emma Watson can't act. I mean, she just can't act. But no, what's going to happen is she's going to continue selling lots of books, and I think they found the formula because the Wizarding World didn't work. Like, it didn't work because you need to be at Hogwarts. You need to be at Hogwarts. It's a Harry Potter franchise. If you want to go ahead, getting past the 19 years, maybe. But nothing can kill this franchise right now. Like, absolutely nothing, especially this issue. Like this issue, with George, we always knew George was a leftist, George Lucas. We always knew it, but didn't bother anybody. It didn't bother a single person. Because George kept that stuff out of Star Wars. Sorry. Whoa. Talk me nerd points there. I got Star Trek on my head. But as far as, this, dude, nothing is going to stop this franchise unless what's going to stop it? Horrible casting for this TV show. That will kill it. As Ryan has brought up, if Hermione is black, it's
which she is all for. Like, keep that in mind. Like, this is going back to the whole idea that she is a progressive, and I have zero horses in this race.
Her thoughts on the play. Yeah. We're talking about the play, right? The Cursed Child, what she didn't write.
No, she's actually brought up in this new show. They want a very diverse cast, and she's all for it. In fact, she's the one supposedly pushing for it.
Well, the cast is diverse. The thing is, if you cast correctly, it's still diverse.